David Brucey here, new episode of Soloing Secrets, and this is Joe Walsh, another absolute legend of rock guitar and another one of my favorite players. And I know I've mentioned that numerous times on my channel here, but I have lots of influences. I have lots of favorites. Joe Walsh is definitely one of them. He's been on the scene since around 1965, solo artist, a former member of James Gang, former member of the Eagles. I mean, a bona fide rock guitar legend. And if you take the music away from Joe's legacy, which that's really hard to do, but if you remove the music and just look at the history, it's really inspiring. When he learned slide from Duane Allman directly, he sold Jimmy Page the #1 Les Paul that appeared on all those Led Zeppelin albums. What he gave Pete Townsend a Gretsch 6120, which Pete used on Who's Next and Quadrophenia. Totally, without question, Joe Walsh is a guitar legend. So much like we've done with other players in the Soloing Secrets series, it's always beneficial to take a peek at a certain player that you're, really focusing on. Look at their influences, and that's going to reveal like where a lot of their ideas and licks and phrasing and stuff like that come from. And with Joe, you can really see and kind of, reveal some of those secrets as far as his phrasing and soloing and stuff like that. But here's an image with some of Joe Walsh's elusive musical influences. Aside from working as a solo artist and the groups I mentioned earlier, James Gang and the Eagles, Joe Walsh has recorded and done tons of session work and guest appearances and stuff like that. And here's an image with some of the players and musicians that Joe Walsh has played with in his career. So mainly because Joe's one of my favorite players, I already kind of knew what I wanted to select or hit, in this lesson, but I wanted to reveal or at least share, his soloing secrets. And there's a lot more than what I'm going to share here. I mean, I didn't really include all the acoustic stuff and open tunings, and of course there's tons of slide stuff. But we're not really going to hit the slide stuff in this episode. We're going to mainly stick with the string bending and vibrato. He has a very distinct and signature, bending and vibrato style. But here's some of Joe Walsh's, soloing secrets. If you'd like to dive a little deeper into Joe Walsh's playing style, I did have a lesson with Premier Guitar. That would have been posted like July of 2015 with the lesson Analog Man, which was literally a tribute to Joe Walsh. And I think you can still find that on their website, so check that out. So the music and ideas in this episode were actually pulled from 7 different Joe Walsh related albums. And whether that was solo material or James Gang or the Eagles, I just kind of grabbed, things that I wanted to hit. And we're going to be looking at a lot of bending and vibrato, which I mentioned that a couple times already. But Joe's bending and vibrato style is very distinct, and these little signature moves, and it can be very elusive and tricky to kind of, figure out exactly what he's doing. But we're going to attack some of these ideas head on, and by the end of this episode, you'll have a better idea of some of those plucky and funky, Joe Walsh bending and vibrato licks. So here we go. So with the opening jam, that's basically kind of a loose version of Woman from the James Gang. That's from the Ride It Again album. And I was just kind of playing around with that riff, but it's in G. So you're really just kind of banging on this G, single note, but I'm also kind of adding like the open D and G in there. It actually starts with the bass, and then the guitar kind of quietly comes in. And then it keeps growing and kind of building from there. But since I was playing it by myself, I kind of did it almost more like a chord, like that. Right? And I'm not really pronouncing those top strings, they're just kind of getting, a little bit of action in there. Like that. And then you're just climbing up chromatically. Started playing a bunch of Joe Walsh licks, and a few of those licks actually are from Woman, like that kind of funky, and that little, and then I just started kind of sprinkling some other Joe Walsh licks in there. A few of those we're going to hit in this lesson, like that really kind of milked bend. I mean, that's a signature Joe Walsh lick, and we're going to be hitting that later in this episode. But, there was double stops and some bending, definitely wound string bending. I think I bent that F down, or up to G. So So definitely Joe's not afraid of those low, kind of throaty, growling bends, which are so cool. Think of, you know, Life's Been Good and some of those songs. All right, now we're going to chip away and reveal a little bit of Joe's bending and vibrato secrets. And this first idea, we're going to basically do some of those half-step, kind of milked bends, where he's doing this kind of stuff. Basically two different versions of this. That's going to be in a minor key, so think G minor right there, and we're really just bending this A up to B flat, right? And you can hear that A bent. We're going to start with the bend, so bend it up a half step and then return back to A, and then just kind of milk that back and forth, and then you're going to grab this E and then end on G. Definitely hear a little bit of B.B. King's influence right there on Joe, because he definitely loves hitting that kind of solid root, almost like B.B. King used to. Right? And then the variation here, instead of doing minor, we can change that to major. You know, if you're going to play over G7 or something, and you're going to bend that A to B now. Bend further. And that's kind of a signature Joe Walsh bending lick for sure. So definitely there's minor and major. So here's a melodic bending and vibrato exercise you can play around with, kind of in the style of Joe Walsh, and we're doing this. That bend in G. But the first time I end on that F right there, targeting that F. And you want to do it again and then target this E right there. And then target this E flat. And you're going to target this G, or I'm sorry, this D note right there on the G string. Just moving chromatically on the G, that F to E to E flat to D. But we're doing that little bending, kind of milked bending lick before it. And then you can also practice that with the major variation there. You know, bend that A to B, and you can do all that in a major key too. Secret in Joe Walsh's universe, you know, in music, is sometimes he's in a very distinct minor key and it's dark and kind of sad, and then other times it's kind of brighter and happier, you know, either in a dominant key or in a major key. Right, up next is the actual Joe Walsh lick, and this is a very signature lick from Joe, and you can hear this in Life in the Fast Lane, Hotel California, and Those Shoes when he was working with the Eagles, and we're still in the key of G, and it's something like this. G, and we're still bending that A to B right there, so you want to do that kind of major bend we were playing with earlier, like that, and you're going to do that back and forth, and then you're going to climb up chromatically on the high E, this B, C, C sharp to D, and play it staccato or accented, like that, and grab that A, bend and release it, and end on G. Kind of play with that minor version. But I think it sounds better major, going to B right there. And you'll definitely catch Joe playing that off the B string like that. But you could also do it off the G right here in the same key. You know, it kind of has a little different feel right there. The exact same lick. The next next bending idea comes from the super famous Life's Been Good from the album But Seriously Folks, and I've always liked this lick. It's very basic, but you're doing this. And we're still in G, and we're going to basically start with this whole step bend, A up to B, and then you're grabbing D and then E right there, and you're going to do this bend and release on that A and end on G like that. So you're bending and then going up to that D and E, and then bend and release the G. Phrase, like the question and answer phrasing here, then he does, so that's the bend and then E and then D and then grab that A and bend it to B. So it's kind of the reverse of what we started with, because we started with this and then answered it with this. So it's a really basic, question and answer phrase right there. This is the question, that answers it. And also in that same solo you can hear some of that sneaky kind of half step bending, like that. And there you're already bent a whole step, the A to B, and then you're going to release it a half step, so then it's you're bent the whole time, but it's back a half step, then up a whole step, back a half step, a whole step, like that, like this. You're milking that bend, but you're already bent. A signature Joe Walsh move right there. So cool. And you can do it down here, different keys, but really expressive too. Now for some more classic bending from Joe Walsh, check out the song Turn to Stone from Barnstorm, a classic song like this. And he's really just kind of playing with the C bent up to D. And you're doing this kind of separated compound bend right there. And Joe loves doing that. Instead of doing it together like a compound bend, he separates it. Really expressive. Listen to Funk 49 and some of those classic songs, and you can hear him do that, where instead of just bending it together, he separates those notes. And sometimes he'll move those notes to other strings or other notes, doing stuff like that. But right there, you're going to start that, you're going to go down that A, and then right there you're going to bend this F up to G, and then F, E down to D. Based around D minor pentatonic, but very emotive and expressive, and I love hearing Joe play like that. For another classic Joe Walsh bending moment, check out Walk Away from the James Gang album Thirds, and this is actually tuned down a half step, so now we're in A flat, but like this. And during that intro part you'll hear this intro lead, so he's actually tuned down a half step, but I didn't run a retune, so we're just still playing in standard, but that intro kind of licks like this. One more time. So right there we're moving this G flat to A flat right there, the 7th and 9th fret. And I'm just sliding there. I guess you could do a hammer on too. And then you hear this bend, this B flat up a whole step to C, and then you're catching with your pinky and grabbing this E flat right there. Like that. Definitely a very twangy, kind of country or rockabilly sounding bend. And you're going to bend that up, grab that E flat once, and then you're going to pick that bent note again, and then pluck that E flat twice. Then you're going to pick that bent note again and release it to that B flat, and then end on A flat, like that. Like that. And I like hybrid picking that. You could also pick it with your pick, like that, but I kind of like separating it with the hybrid picked note, like that. Some more tasty bending from the same song, Walk Away, during the solo, like this. You know, so tasteful right there. One more time. You know, love stuff like that. So we're kind of sliding into the C note. And you're doing the C, F, the C, E flat to F. And when you grab that F note, scoot back to E flat and bend that back to F, like that. So it's really cool. Your ear picks up the fact that you heard this note, and then you hear it again bent like that. So it kind of plays with your ear. And the next time. So that last time, right there, you're going to move into the same notes, that C, E flat, and F. Bend that F up to G flat. Then you're going to catch this D flat, move that back to C. And you're going to end on A flat, right there. Really cool. The last example I'm going to share here comes from Asshtonpark, and this is from the James Gang album Rides Again. And if you have a delay pedal, kick some delay on, because there's this bouncy delay effect the whole time, like this. Still in G, we're back in G now. But he's doing this really interesting thing with the delay too. He's letting the delay kind of bounce and repeat, and you're hearing those repeats, you know, mixed with the licks and stuff he's playing. But he's doing this. Let me turn that delay back a little bit there. I want to make sure you can actually hear what I'm playing there. So you're going to bend this A up to B, catch this G on the high E string with your pinky, and then F to E. And then grab this D back to E, like that. And then do that bend again. That second time just end on that D note and start it again. And the last time, you know, really basic phrase, but I love those weird, you know, kind of bends and stuff where he's bending a lower note and catches a really high note. And of course the delay repeats and everything sound cool in there. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Soloing Secrets with Joe Walsh. And I know over the years when I've had students or friends or coworkers or old bandmates or whoever ask, like, who are some of your favorite players? When I mention Joe Walsh, it seems to confuse certain people. Because I'm sure they're expecting Van Halen or Jimmy Page or Hendrix or whatever. But when I say Joe Walsh, certain people, they're like, Joe Walsh? Are you a big Eagles fan? And honestly, I'm not a big Eagles fan. I love Joe Walsh. I love the James Gang, Barnstorm, and some of that stuff. The Eagles is okay. I mean, I'm not like an anti-Eagles person. But, I mean, technically in the 70s, Joe Walsh only played on 2 Eagles albums. Even though that's the band everybody associates with Joe Walsh for some reason. And to me, I mean, yeah, that music's great and legendary. But I love the James Gang. I love the stuff he was doing before the Eagles. And I love his solo stuff. And there's just something about him. I mean, he sounds like a human being, you know, heart and soul, playing guitar. It doesn't sound like a computer or a robot or some shred machine or whatever. it's a human being. You know, you can hear the emotion, you can hear the feel and the energy, and that really speaks to me way more than mindless shredding, you know, at the speed of light. Yeah, that's really impressive, but it doesn't move me. I don't feel anything when I hear somebody just shredding like a madman. But when I hear somebody grab a guitar and they play a melodic solo, or they just, you know, kind of, they just play with a lot of feel and energy and that gritty kind of human, you know, sound or response. That speaks to me. It stops me in my tracks and I turn it up, you know. And yeah, I turn the shred stuff up too, but there's something about that emotive, you know, playing guitar with feeling. That's where it's at. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.